is that one day every person gets the treatment they deserve in a timely manner. I believe our healthcare system needs to be supercharged with insights gathered using big data. My name is Liesbeth Peters. I'm the chair of the MS Data Alliance, and I'm a data scientist at the University MS Center at Hasselt University in Belgium. And I would like to start with sharing a more personal story. Meet Glenn. I met Glenn a few years ago, and we were doing a PhD more or less at the same time. In 2011, he started to show his first symptoms of MS, which for him included numbness in the leg, loss of strength, balance control issues, and fatigue. Glenn spent about 5 years to get a proper diagnosis, prognosis, and treatment plan. 5 years. And during that time, he deteriorated quite massively. He needed a cane to walk. He couldn't find a job after his PhD, specifically of cognitive impairment. He was tired all the time and therefore had to stop playing badminton, where he was doing that in a competition earlier. So I believe that there are many gaps in our knowledge that need to be answered using real-world data. And real-world data is defined as data that is gathered in a real world in comparison to those of the clinical trial. So some examples include registry data or data using electronic patient files. So actually, to speed up the process of diagnosis, prognosis, and treatment, like in the case of Glenn, we need to have insights that are data-driven and that can address some urgent questions. Like, for example, how can we diagnose better and earlier? And how can we actually cope with the outcome measures like EDSS? Does an increase of EDSS actually means that this person is deteriorating, or is it just noise? And some very important questions like how effective are treatments in a real world setting? So they are approved for in a clinical trial, but what happens if we start using those treatments in a real world setting when people are pregnant, when they are older, when they switch a treatment? And how safe and tolerable are these treatments in a real world setting? Again, when people are aging or pregnant, or when we are using drugs for a very long time. And it's very clear that using data in a collaborative way has been shown to be very effective. And there are a large number of high impact papers, and some of them are shown in this slide, that have showcased the success of actually performing collaborative research, sharing data, and achieving insights together. However, collaborative research scaling up real-world health data is challenging and time-consuming. And I'm sharing with you a timeline of a research project that is not MS specific, but almost anyone who has been involved in a collaborative research project involving health data will actually empathize with these timelines. So this is a research project where they had to combine about 30 cohorts and a minimal set of variables of about 20 variables. And they started in 2011 with identifying the cohorts that could be fit for purpose and inviting them to be on board. They spent another 2 years to get access to the data, to go through all the ethical approvals and administration to facilitate data transfer. And then they spend about 18 months to 2 years trying to harmonize the data, pre-processing it to prepare it for the statistical analysis. So when you put this on a timeline, that's about 5 years to find, access, and reuse data. 5 years, that's just too long. Specifically, if we remember that during those 5 years, people are deteriorating over time, like Helene I mentioned earlier. And I believe that instead of years, it should only take a few hours, days, weeks, or months, but it should definitely be faster. But why does it take so long? And it has a variety of reasons, and I'm sharing a few of them. One of the major reasons is that the heterogeneity between MS registries and cohorts is very high. They have a different purpose, they have a different level of maturity, they have a different size, and they measure different variables. For example, when we are looking at purpose, they differ quite heavily. And this is a slide where I differentiated some of the major initiatives that currently exist based on their purpose. And of course, this is highly pragmatic, but it's just to set the scene. So we have some very large national registries. We have a number of registries or cohorts who are focusing on deep phenotyping or biobanking. And then we have some examples of research, massive research collaboration at global scale. We have some initiatives that were initiated or are driven by people with MS or patient advocates or societies. And then we have some initiatives that are more focusing on a special target population, like for example, MS in the Hispanic population. And then there are some other initiatives that are working more to improve the care path concept. Some examples include the MSDS system or Optimize MS. Another example is that actually real world data is just very challenging to work with. So because it is indeed collected in a real world setting, it also involves a quite severe reality check. For example, imagine 3 registries want to collect information on employment. One registry asks, do you currently have a job or do you do any unpaid work outside your home? Another registry asks, what's your job title? And they just have an open text. Another registry does like more of a drop-down menu where people can choose what their current employment status is. Although these 3 registries are working or performing research on employment, they're doing it in a very variety of ways. And another example is indeed that data is just very messy. And this is just an example of some data we as a research group actually worked with, where Copaxone was used as a disease modifying therapy. And you can see that people are either using like the glatiramer acetate, or they're having typos, or they're using different languages. So all these things are actually referring to Copaxone, but it's messy and there's a lot of noise around it. So that takes a long time to harmonize that data. And that's why with the MS Data Alliance, we aim to tackle those challenges. We aim to overcome some of the sociological and technical barriers that arise when we want to scale up real world data. So the MS Data Alliance is a global, multi-stakeholder collaboration that is working to accelerate insights for innovative care and treatment for people with MS, so that instead of 5 years for a collaborative research project, it would only take a few hours, a few days, or a few months, and not years. And we believe that there are both sociological as well as technical challenges that need to be overcome. And therefore, we implement a dual approach where we have an academy versus a toolbox. And in the academy, we focus much more on the sociological barriers. And we do this by raising awareness about the importance of research using real world data, so that more people with MS, more clinicians, and other stakeholders are engaged and aware that it is important to collect data and to share it for collaborative research projects. And we also work on building a multi-stakeholder MS data community. So we believe that when it comes to data sharing, different stakeholders are important, and I will touch upon the stakeholders later. And we would like to bring those people together regularly to touch upon some important topics concerning data sharing, analysis, and handling. And of course, we also would like to promote trustworthy and transparent practices in the use of real-world MS data by providing educational tools and information on how data can be used. And then the more technical barriers, we tackle those in what we call the MSDA toolbox, where we touch upon some of the barriers that were raised earlier. For example, which data is actually out there? Most people don't know. So we catalog the data, we provide where the registries are, who the contact person is, which data they are collecting, and so on. And then we believe that actually developing a standardized MS data dictionary early onwards in the data collection procedures, but also early onwards in a collaborative research project, can fasten up the process. And then finally, we aim to develop a federated data network. And I will touch upon these 2 latest, more complicated topics a little bit later with a very concrete example. But first, a little bit of who we are and our background. So the MS Data Alliance is a rather new initiative. So we had our formal kickoff last year in 2019. But actually has a quite of a long history preceding the kickoff of the MS Data Alliance, and it arises from the very passionate and successful advocacy work of the European MS Platform, or EMSP. So they have been addressing the lack of MS registries for already a very long time, and started doing that with the MS Barometer in 2017. There was the EURIMS initiative, which was the European Registry in MS initiative, where they piloted to perform collaborative research using registries. And they managed to advocate and lobby to actually have MS as one of the pilots of the European of the European Medicine Agency Patient Registry Initiative, which is an initiative of the EMA that aims to explore whether or not it would be possible to use registry data or real-world data for long-term post-authorization safety assessment. So indeed, we had the MS workshop within that EMA Patient Registry Initiative, which delivered a quite extensive and complete report on steps that needed to be done. And that report was one of the foundations to actually brainstorm about, okay, how should we move ahead with this data ecosystem to improve the use of real-world data in the MS community. And we had a working group and also thought about the name for the first time in 2018. And then we had a formal kickoff of the MS Data Alliance in 2019. And at that time, it was a joint initiative between EMSP, who had been driving it for already over a decade, and Hasselt University, which is my host university. And then currently, the MS Data Alliance is a multi-stakeholder collaboration. And with the stakeholders, I mean that we include researchers, clinicians, industry, regulatory decision makers, people with MS and patient societies, and of course also data custodians. The legal entity is the European Charcot Foundation, and we have a multi-stakeholder decision-making process in place. So we have a core group, which I will explain a little bit later, that is supported by a multi-stakeholder scientific advisory group and regular stakeholder focus group, where we consult with all our stakeholders. And we are also part of the multi-stakeholder MS initiatives of the European Charcot Foundation. So currently 6 core partners are driving the initiative forward, and that is based on the partners who are driving the strategic focus areas I explained earlier. So the European MS platform, which is mainly involved in the patient engagement, the European Charcot Foundation, who takes the lead in the community building, the European Institute for Innovation Through Health Data, which is a non-for-profit focusing on overcoming barriers that arise with scaling up, Hasselt University, KU Leuven, and then the University Medical Center of Göttingen, who mainly focus on the harmonization part and the federated analysis. So we have 2 pioneer registries, the MS Registry of Germany and the UK, who have been from the beginning onwards very passionate to actually pioneer some of the principles that we put forward. So I touched upon 2 major examples that illustrate what we do so that it becomes a little bit more concrete to visualize it. So building a multi-stakeholder MS data community is actually bringing all these stakeholders together and touching upon important topics in the data ecosystem. And actually, so our stakeholders are, as I already mentioned, a variety of stakeholders ranging from researchers to data custodians to regulatory decision makers, and we bring them together in regular meetings. And the first one was actually in 2018, where we had a very small room in Ektrims, and it was almost the farthest away that you could imagine, but still people were coming to hear what we were doing and to actually engage. And then you can see that about a year later in 2019, we had our formal kickoff meeting, which was actually in a wonderful place in Baveno, actually hosted by the European Charcot Foundation and preceding the European Charcot Foundation annual conference, where where many stakeholders were brought together. So these are just the organizations where representatives of these organizations were attending this Vaveno meeting, and where we were touching upon some important topics like harmonization, analysis, governance, and so on. So that was the formal kickoff in 2019. And you can see that actually it is a global movement, and representatives of almost every continent were participating in this meeting. We can also see and acknowledge that there are still some areas in the world where it is difficult to have outreach. And that's why I'm very happy actually with this invitation to actually speak to this more Latin American audience, so that I hope that by this presentation, we can also engage and activate other people in a continent where actually outreach until now is quite limited. So I would like to thank again the organizers for the invitation. Another example I would like to touch upon is indeed these two quite complicated concepts I explained earlier, this dictionary or these harmonization efforts, and then this federated data network, because it's quite difficult if you're not a data scientist, but I will explain this with a very concrete and tangible problem. So we have been involved as the MS Data Alliance, acting under the umbrella of the European Charcot Foundation, in leading and coordinating the COVID-19 in MS Global Data Sharing Initiative. And the COVID-19 in MS Global Data Sharing Initiative is a joint initiative between the MS Data Alliance and the MS International Federation that has a very concrete mission. So we started about in March when the COVID-19 pandemic hit us with a very concrete mission. We wanted to support people affected with MS, healthcare professionals and researchers during the pandemic to achieve insights on some urgent questions on COVID-19 in people with MS. And we did this by formulating three major objectives. We wanted to scale up as fast as possible and to then achieve insights to support care during the pandemic, but also to stimulate future research. And of course, this first objective, scaling up, fits perfectly in our MSDA mission. So we did this, of course, in a massive consortium. Many partners contributed. So we had partners in data handling, analysis. Some of them were from the MSDA, but we also had external partners like the Karolinska Institute and the University of Melbourne. And we were, of course, helped with one of our partners to provide us of a platform, which was Qmenta. And again, it was a global initiative. There was a massive amount of registries and cohorts who were activated and who participated. So this slide summarizes the current data partners. You can see how global it is, how many registries have participated, and many of those registries are in fact global in their design as well. So of course, this initiative is accompanied with quite a technical complexity of data sharing, as well as legal and ethical issues. And I would like to share some of the concepts that we introduced that are very in line with the vision of the MSDA. And the first is this early harmonization. And to actually envision what we mean with that is that by defining a list of variables early onwards in the process, downstream analysis and collaborative research can be speed up massively. And defining such a list of variables is not easy. Normally it takes several months or years to come up with a list of variables, but here we did this in only 48 hours. And we did this because, of course, time was of the essence, and we started to prepare some draft recommendations by comparing the initiatives that were already working on COVID-19 to align with more generic COVID-19 data collections that were more global and not disease specific. And then we had a very concrete consensus building global task force where we brought different stakeholders together. And we actually, the aim was to, at the end of that 60-minute meeting, we had a list of variables that could be the common denominator. And we came up with a list of variables that including the variables that we thought we needed to address the most urgent questions, which were mostly focusing on severity of outcomes and the effect of DMT, risk of COVID-19 infection. So, and to actually come up with a very pragmatic technical solutions, this is what we proposed. So we envisioned an infrastructure or a technical solution that was very inclusive. And the vision was that anybody who wanted to collaborate would be willing to do so, and the technical barriers would be overcome as much as possible. And we came up with this 3-level approach. So we had people, clinicians and people with MS entering data directly into the platform. And then we had registries across the globe that were incorporating that COVID-19 in MS core data set. So they were implementing that locally, using their own governance structures, their own ethical approvals, and their own network, of course, and in that sense could scale up. And then those registries shared that data set inside a central platform, and it was combined with the direct entry to actually give an aggregate of patient level data. However, some registries were mostly larger, and therefore, of course, the governance principles are more complicated, and shipping patient level data can sometimes be time consuming. And because in the matter of COVID-19, we didn't have time. So we came up with this, what we call federated pipeline. And you can see that in the top of the figure. So what do we mean with the federated pipeline? It means that the data itself is not shared, but that we actually share the analysis script that we run in the platform. So we share the script, people run the script locally, and only the result of that script is being shared, which can be counts or estimates and so on, but which is outside the scope of the privacy rules, and therefore can be shared much more easily. And that way we could speed up massively. So, so just to give you an idea, these are the timelines. So as you remember, a normal global collaborative research project takes about 5 years, and that is like a normal timeline. Whereas by implementing some of the principles, as well as, of course, all the sociological barriers that dropped, because people were highly engaged to collaborate and to achieve answers very fast, we managed to adhere to unseen timelines. So we had the kickoff global meeting early end of March, and within a month we had the platform completed, ethics approved, the contract signed, and already 2 first successful uploads. And then in June there were already some first preliminary results, and we actually were part of the global advice for people with MS for clinical guidance. So we shared some preliminary data together with the Italian cohort so that the data could already be updated before summer. And then only a few weeks ago, we had, or I think it's a few days ago, we had the MS Virtual 2020 Late Breaker, where we released the first insights on the effect of individual DNT on COVID-19 severity. So the most important impact that we believe we created by sharing our principles and vision is that by implementing these federated principles, we could actually increase 50% of the participating registries from 12 to 18. We could have about 50% increase of records from about 5,700 to 8,500. We reduced the time needed for weekly data wrangling for about 70% to a few hours, where normally you need a couple of days. And that way we managed to give news by support updated clinical guidance before summer for people with MS. And that was very important for us as a team. So in summary, the major lessons learned are that the MS community is amazing, actually, and it can work together to adhere to unseen timelines to achieve results when the need is high. And in a time of crisis, ethical, technical, and legal barriers can be overcome within a limited amount of time. And some of the principles that we position forward as the MSDA, like implementing a common data model early onwards, harmonizing early onwards in the pipeline, as well as implementing automated data quality checks and federated analysis pipelines, enables data scale up and reduces time massively. So of course, this has been a team effort. I am only one person in this massive amount of consortium of data partners, data analysts, data wranglers, as well as our sponsors. And I would like to thank everyone for their support and by actually endorsing us to move forward. So thank you also to the people who are listening. And I'm happy to take questions either live or via email and can always be contacted. Thank you.